Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boy, NOVAMAN on the beat. Um, Thank y'all for watching this video. I wanted to take a different approach to these forums and whatnot, because it appears that, whenever someone posts up something, on the forum, what tends to happen is, you know, people will respond, but it's like, okay, seeing is kind of better than just kind of telling, unless you just are absolutely like you understand, without having to see anything, right? So I wanted to take some the opportunity to kind of respond to one of the posts that was on Facebook about um, EQing and the sweet spots and so forth. So I want to take some time today to go through that. Let's check out one of those posts. Okay, so here we are. Someone posted, sometimes it was about a couple hours ago, obviously, says, "Hey guys, to engineers, okay, what frequency numbers that are sweet?" Let me read that again. What frequencies numbers that are sweet and good for vocals so that they can seat well in the mix? I'm gonna assume he meant to say sit well in the mix. Um, and there's a couple comments in here, people saying, okay, well, basically some people can be jerks, some people can be really informative and education in their responses. So I wanted to take a different approach and go in and actually show you how some of the practices and things that I believe that are really good when it comes to mixing vocals and EQing vocals and so forth. So let's check it out. Here's a session that I recorded not too long ago. I recorded this actually with my X4, my Apollo X4, and I recorded these vocals of the singer. Her name is Nikki. I recorded these vocals at her apartment in her living room, and it was a very small apartment. I even think we had a little bit of air conditioning running too at the same time. However, I had a little bit of a C Suite CVox by Apollo, one of the plugins running through the Apollo console uh, to cut back some of that noise and whatnot that we hear, that you might be able to hear in the audio. So, well, without further ado, let's take a listen at this piece right here. I'm going to play this without the beat in it. Here's the beat up here real quick. We don't necessarily need to see what the beat looks like, but this is a 2-track beat. I produced the beat as well. But let's check this out. I'm going to mute the beat. Listen to the vocals. Hold on just a second. And we don't necessarily need the ad lib in there too. We're going to take that out. Just leave that like it is. Here we go.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right. Take me back, take me back. Oh, yeah.
All right, so you get the idea there of what it sounds like. You can kind of hear some of the ambient noise kind of feeding back into the microphone, which isn't too bad. It actually sounds pretty good. We recorded this on the OC818 microphone, and again we used the Apollo X4 as our interface. So EQing, well, there's a couple of different EQs out there that you could use. You can use the parametric EQ. You can use the neutron parametric EQ. You could use a graphic EQ. I'm just going to name off a few. There's a couple of different ones out there, but you got a graphic EQ here. And then you also got, kind of like an EQ module, so to speak. It's not necessarily like a channel strip, but it's a It's one of the newer ones out there that you probably will see people use on vocals. And I'm going to kind of move a little bit fast because there's a couple different things that I want to kind of discuss here really quick. So one of the first things I'll use, I'll go ahead and I'm going to bypass all of these. We'll start off using the parametric EQ, okay, by Isotope. Native Instruments, Isotope, Neutron 4. That's what we're at, right? That's what we're using. So typically in the vocals, you want to kind of, sometimes you want to, I typically start out with cutting the, cutting some of that, using a high pass filter on the low end. So, and I just start shaving some of that off, right? So let's start from down here and then I'll go back. Let's listen.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right.
So I think that sounds pretty good. I think the slope is okay with that. Let's take a listen at what happens when you use this high pass filter and when you adjust the slopes. Let's check it out.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right. Take me back, take me back. Oh, yeah.
So you got to get the idea of that, right? So, and then after that, once I start figuring out what my high pass filter feels like, I'll just start dipping around this area, around that, 250 to 300. Let's see how that goes.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right. Take me back, take me back.
So typically around here, this is where I specifically like to, dip some vocals. I'll go right in there. Like right now, it's like right at 300 hertz. 301 hertz. But typically around that 250, 300 hertz is where I'll start to dip here a little bit. Just and again, I'm using my ears at the same time. Let's check out some other frequencies here.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you.
Now that sounds like it sounds like you're speaking into a cup, right? So sometimes you like to find these certain frequencies, and just kind of listen to them. Let's do that again.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time. Let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right.
Now that could have been a little bit more extreme than what I wanted to be, because you still want your vocals to have life. So again, I'm using my ears and just kind of giving an idea of again what I want the vocal to sound like, because once the beat comes in there, we want the beat and the vocal to mesh well together. You still want that vocal to sit on top, but you just want it to mesh well together. Let's check it out.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would.
Now, some of the life of the vocal kind of resides around in this, 5,000 to 6,300 range. So you can kind of play around again with the nodes here, on a parametric EQ and just kind of find those spots as well.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind.
Okay. And then we'll start playing around with the high end, So some of this high end information is important because you want to bring back some of that you want to bring back some of that brightness on the vocal. You can kind of hear some of the brightness here with in this range. Typically this range right here is kind of like it gives you that a little bit of bite to it, but sometimes you want to just make sure you don't overdo it, because once you get to the mastering stage, you don't want your vocals to sound like they've been have too much high end to it. So let's take a listen.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine.
So as you saw, I brought it all the way up here and then I brought it down. So it's kind of like, I'm using some deductive reasoning at the, I add a bunch and then I take away what I prefer to be out of the mix. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want it to be too bright. I just give it a little bit and then I bring it back. You know what I'm saying? So about right there. Let's take a listen again.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight.
No bypass.
To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right, take me back.
And again, we don't have any there's no compression or anything going on in the vocal. I can't remember if going through the Apollo console, the application over here. I'll show you guys. Okay, gotta get that out of the way. So this is the Apollo console, and I don't know if I had necessarily during that recording session what was on that chain, so I'm not really going to be worried about that too much. But as you can hear, it sounds pretty good. So when she gets to that high part, it does sound like there's a little bit of compression going on, but we're worried about EQ today. EQing, sweet spots. So that's what it sounds like bypassed.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight.
Unbypassed.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight.
And one thing I didn't mention, like we didn't even talk about, is compression and also reverb and things like that. So those things also add a little bit of life to the vocal. So as you're EQing and whatnot, find out what sounds good to you. If it doesn't sound good, keep going until you get it. If you're on a time frame or time schedule, then you might want to kind of move your processes up a little bit quicker. What I mean by that is work faster. And then practice, just practice. That's, some advice I can give to you at this point. Let's move on to this next plugin. So this one was the parametric EQ. I'm going to go ahead and move into the graphic EQ, which is actually probably one of my favorite EQs. This is the EQ by Nomad Factory. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. So Nomad Factory makes this really simple plugin. I've used it on all of my tracks, every single last track I've been mixing over the past, I would say 9-10 years. I've been using this plugin. At one point, I was using this like as my main EQ, and nowadays I'll instantiate the Neutron 4, and then I'll do some other compression, and then I'll bring this in to kind of like, kind of fine tune some things in vocals that I mix. But let's check this out real quick, and I'll show you some of the similar concepts while using a graphic EQ. Check it out.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight.
So we want to get rid of some of that low end boominess. We still like the warmth though. You don't want to take away too much warmth. I think she has a nice soulful voice. So that this frequency 63 to 100 is probably where that warmth sits a little bit. But let's check it out. We want to make sure we don't take out too much or add in too much. If we start adding in too much, you'll see what it sounds like. Check it out.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right, take me back, take me back. Oh.
And as you can hear, that rumble that's in the audio, stuff that you don't need. You just take that out. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and move through these frequencies, and you'll hear like certain areas where, again, we discussed with the parametric EQ, you'll hear some of those similar things. 63K, that between this area and 63K, that's where some of your bite lies. And then also right here in the 10K area too. So we'll play around with that in terms of like brightness and clarity. That all resides down here. How much clarity you want to have, how much of this mid-range kind of body you want to give it, and then of course a little bit more of that depth and warmth you can add down here. So let's check it out.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right, take me back, take me back. Oh, yeah.
As you can see, I'm just kind of playing around with some things, just listening. I'm not really like using any I am using the technical strategies. Those are in my head as well, but I'm also using my ears. What sounds good to me while using this EQ? Let's check out some of this high end down here.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right, take me back, take me back. Oh.
So that sounds pretty good to me. And I'm gonna go ahead and play it again.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right.
So you kind of get the idea of how this works. This parametric EQ, I think you can kind of dial in certain frequencies a little bit better than you can with the parametric EQ. But there are certain things, I like about using a graphic EQ versus using a parametric EQ. There's a lot of things that I can maybe control a little bit better, and I can also get some of my vocals to sit well, sit better, and sound better in the mixes. Let's move on to this next one. So this is the graphic EQ. Let's move on to our next EQ. Now this is one by Neuro Audio. I use this sometimes. I don't use it a whole bunch. I think if I'm feeling like I want to be lazy and I don't feel like, doing other processes and stuff like some parallel compression and things like that, which I do use a lot on my vocals. But sometimes when you just want to do something really quick, and I used the wrong term. I didn't want to say lazy. I'm never lazy with my mixes. But when it comes to moving quickly and being able to, dial in some stuff really fast, modules like this, plugins like this will help you as well. In this case, this one has a compressor, EQ section, reverb, and then some sound effect section here. So let's go ahead and play with it real quick.
I want a night like the first night.
Let me go back and explain. You got low, mid, and high, and then you got some air right here. So they kind of simplify things in this plugin so that you are, again, being effective and efficient with mixing vocals or whatever it is that you're mixing. So let's check it out.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine.
So similar concept with that you saw that we did with both of the previous EQs. We're kind of taming a little bit of that low end and so forth. All right. So we're gonna keep going here.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right, take me back, take me back. Oh, yeah.
And sometimes you can give the vocal a little bit of air.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right, take me back, take me back. Oh.
So this, I can tell right now that this EQ is doing something a little bit different, to the vocal. However, you got these different sections up here that you can do some different things with those vocals as well. So we're going to cycle through these and see how they each of them sound.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right, take me back, take me back. Oh, yeah.
So this one at the, I think as we got down here, this one sounded like, I would say this one sounded the best. It says shaper, but not exactly what it's shaping, but the tone and everything just sounded a little bit more natural to me. So I would probably lean more towards using this one. Let's listen to that again.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right, take me back.
Now, also in these modules, you got a de-esser that's in here. You got a compressor that adds a little bit of coloration and some other characters to it as well. So those are all other instances that you can add to bring some other life to your mix. All right, to those vocal mixes, excuse me. And of course, in this section of reverb is always going to be like a friend of yours when EQing or mixing any kind of vocal, in my opinion. Excuse me.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right, take me back.
So you guys get the picture, right? So this EQ is by or this module is by Neuro Audio. Sometimes I'll reach for this one, and if I want to do something really quick, if I'm not really putting a whole bunch of time into vocal mixing, and if it's a smaller project, I'm most likely I will probably reach for something like this and knock it out really fast, just using a few movements and so forth. But if I'm really trying to dial in certain things, I will go through a completely different process. That's for a different video and different EQs and so forth. All right, let's move on. And then the last but not least, something very simple to use in your mixes is Fresh Air by Slate Digital. Straightforward to the point, mid air, high air. Okay. I think I use this on all of my tracks as well. This is probably like one of the last ones I use in my chain, unless it's a multi-band compressor or something like that. But I typically like to use this as one of my last in my chain. But let's check out what it does.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine.
So the only thing with this plugin is it doesn't offer like all of this is just additive stuff, you know what I'm saying? And it's not necessarily like you can't shave off any of the low frequencies that you hear. There's no mid attack, but it does provide certain clarity and vibrance to it, perhaps once you have applied all your EQs and things like that at the end. Let's use some of the ones that we've used before. I'm going to bypass it, and then I'm going to go ahead and unbypass the neutron, bring this guy back in.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always.
So a lot of these, again, plugins can provide you a little bit of the tools to be able to, to get to where you feel like those vocals should be. I think for me, it's all ears. I'm using my ears, and then I'm using my Batman belt, and I'm pulling out some of these tools to refine or add a little bit more clarity or balance to the mix. I only picked this one. I chose this one because I wanted to show you that mainly this one is giving air to the vocal, and it's not taking away anything. So you can also, use stuff like this again to create clarity, but it has like almost like a one feature type of deal. In this case, it's 2 features. Or if you want to use the trim, you can use the trim as well. But I wanted to pull that one out too. So when attacking like certain sweet spots, you could probably add this in there to attack a certain sweet spot, or make it sound a little bit more, again, vibrant. But this is just my opinion. I appreciate you tuning in and watching this video. Hopefully it wasn't too long. Hopefully it wasn't. One thing. Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. I'm trying to close out the video and forgot to add in the beat. What did this vocal sound like with the beat added in? So I'm going to go ahead and bypass this one, and then we're going with the neutron, and we'll add that beat in. Here we go.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right, take me back, take me back. Oh, yeah.
And there you have it. And then we'll move on to this other EQ, the graphic EQ. Here's our graphic EQ. Check it out.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right, take me back, take me back. Oh, yeah.
And you can kind of hear the consistency of what's going on in these the mix, in terms of like how where the vocals are sitting and how it's sounding in the audio, with the beat. So consistency is key. Small strategies that you use for different songs strategies that you use for one should also apply for another, right? And I say strategies, not necessarily the same, like, EQ settings and so forth, but strategies. But like cutting out the low end, figuring out where the mid range sits, and figuring out what's going on in the vocal on the high end for each vocalist that you work with. All right. And it could be different from song to song. So just be mindful, even if you have the same vocalist, the EQ settings could be different from song to song, but still the same strategies should apply. All right, let's check it out with this one.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right. Take me back, take me back. Oh, yeah.
All right. And that's pretty much it. I'm not going to do the, well, I could do the fresh air on this. Let's check it out, what it sounds like. We're going to keep this one up. And we'll go ahead and bring fresh air in. Let's see what it sounds like.
I want a night like the first night, remembering us holding each other tight. To that one moment in time when you promised you would always be mine. Like the hands of time, let's just rewind. When loving you felt so right. Take me back, take me back. Oh, yeah.
And that's pretty much it. At the end of the day, again, what I'm probably using on my vocal chains is a couple compressors, some dynamic EQs, multi-band compressors, and also the fresh air. Yeah, again, that's usually one that I add on all of my vocals. But I'm also being very vigilant about how much of fresh air I'm providing on each vocal, because I don't want it to sound too bright and so forth. All right. Other than that, appreciate you listening. Appreciate you watching. I hope I've been informative, and hope we can do it again. Look forward to hearing back from y'all, looking at your comments. Again, this is all in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? This isn't the end all be all to mixing, but if the strategies fit, why not use them? All right. Peace. NOVAMAN on the beat.